Welcome everyone to the 71st anniversary Sahavas of the Heartland Center. We're so happy that you all could join us for these 2 days of Sahavas. And I wanted to say a few things about what Mayor Baba said about Sahavas. He said that Sahavas is the give and take of love, that the keynote of a Sahavas program is the giving and receiving of love. And it reminds me of Baba's quote on love, where he says, love is essentially self-communicative. Those who do not have it catch it from those who have it. Those who get love from others cannot be its recipients without giving a response, which is in the nature of love. True love is unconquerable and irresistible, and it goes on gathering power and spreading itself until eventually it transforms everyone whom it touches. I want to just talk a little bit about the Heartland Center for those who aren't familiar with it or haven't been. The Heartland Center was founded as a retreat center to make it possible for Baba lovers who wish to come and visit the 2 sacred sites in Prague associated with Baba's accident, that it makes it easy to do that. And those 2 sites are the hospital where Mayor Baba, Elizabeth, Mera, and Meru recuperated for 12 days following the accident. And the hospital room itself has quite a charge of Baba's presence, and the hospital staff feel that as well. In fact, they refer to Baba's room as the prayer room, and they've even labeled the key prayer room. The other site is the accident site where Baba spilled his blood on American soil, just as he had predicted many years before. The Heartland Center itself is composed of 2 houses. One is the Burleson House, which was the original home of Dr. Ned Burleson, and that has room for pilgrims and just very, very beautiful space. And the next house is the Morrison House, which adjoins the Burleson House, and it also provides lovely rooms for pilgrims to stay and space for people to have meetings. And both of the houses adjoin the hospital. So it's quite a beautiful setting there. I also want to just share something that Elizabeth Patterson related about the Heartland Center. Well, it was about what Baba said about 5 centers. And in 1931, on Baba's first trip to the United States, not only did he give his mission to the West, but he also spoke about there being 5 centers, like 5 fingers on one hand, and that each center would be doing its own work in its own place. And later he gave clues as to where those centers might be. One clue that points directly to the Heartland Center is it would be in the center of the country. And it's just, to me and to many of us, it seems obvious that Baba had a definite plan in store for the Heartland Center. I wanted to just also let people know that we welcome all of you to come. And if you haven't been to the Heartland Center, we're going to put a photo up that has our website address. And it's a photo of the Burleson House with the website underneath it. And we'll also put that on the chat, so it will be available for anyone to make note of. Okay, anyway, welcome so much, and really looking forward to this time together. And I'm going to turn the program over to our moderator, Elisa Genovese. Thank you.
Welcome all to the 71st anniversary Sahavas. It's always such a joy and a blessing to come together to focus on Baba through sharing about him and enjoying the company of his lovers through talks and music, prayer and japa. This time, we have the great opportunity to broadcast the Sahavas live from Prague, because we wanted to give those of you who have not been here or had the opportunity to visit yet a little taste of what it's like to be in this beautiful setting, as Pamela mentioned, and perhaps get inspired to come and have a visit for yourself. And for those of you who have been here before, we're hoping that this will give you a reminder just how special this place is and what Baba has provided here for all of us, and to come again soon. So I'd like to share a little bit about the program we have. We've got 2 wonderful days full of lots of information and wonderful talks. Tonight's program will go from 7:30 to 9:30 Eastern Time. And our featured guest this evening is our special guest, Julia Margaret Burleson, who will be talking about her time here as a child. We'll have musical performances by Julie and Rusty Rust from Nashville. And tomorrow, we'll begin the morning with the japa, which will start from 5 to 12. And that will be in whatever time zone you're in. So if you haven't signed up for that, please do so, or just take some time and do it during that time period. It'll be culminating in the time of Baba's accident, which is at 11:45 a.m. Eastern Time. Arti will begin at 11 o'clock and go till 11:45. It'll be followed by a few minutes of silence to coincide with Baba's accident. Tomorrow night, which is the actual day of the accident, we have another wonderful program planned that you won't want to miss. So be sure to come back on tomorrow night, beginning at 7:30 Eastern. The featured presentation tomorrow will be a very enlightening and thought-provoking panel about the significance and impact of Baba's sacred sites. We'll also have more music by Julie and Rusty Rust. And in addition to our programming, we're going to have throughout the Sahavas, we'll be sharing some very important and exciting news about new developments here in Prague. So please stay tuned, you won't want to miss it. And so we want to begin our Sahavas this evening with giving you a little bit of information about the Heartland Center. And to do that, I want to invite Lynn Berry to share a narrative she prepared entitled "From the Foreshadowing of Baba's Accident."
In 1932, Meher Baba made his second trip to the West. It was also his second stay at Harmon on the Hudson, a short visit lasting only a few days. Elizabeth Patterson, also there, experienced what would become a profound foreshadowing of Baba's accident. Baba gave her this small pink wildflower. He told her to keep it safe, mark the date, and that someday she would understand its significance. The date was May 24th, 1932. Baba's accident was exactly 20 years later to the day, May 24th, 1952. Elizabeth was the driver of Baba's car that crashed, which also carried Mara, Mani, and Meru. In 1933, Baba gave a profound reference to his work on American soil when he stated, "I have been silent for 8 years. It is not a vow, but it has been undertaken for spiritual reasons. Shortly, my mission of preaching will begin. My reason for starting in America is that America, being the most deeply engrossed in material things and suffering the most in consequence, is the soil on which a new spiritual rebirth will first take place. America requires only the guiding hand of a master to redirect its material powers to the heights of spirituality." Baba profusely shed his blood on American soil at the Prague accident site. He and his beloved Mara, on that fateful rainy day, were thrown out of Elizabeth's car, traveling 90 miles an hour, landing in a muddy ditch alongside the highway. The accident was horrific. Delia de Leon, a passenger in the second car behind Baba's, gave Sarosh her pillow to place under Baba's head, which became drenched with Baba's blood. Delia later gave this pillow to Mayor Spiritual Center as a tangible symbol of Mayor Baba's love and sacrifice for America and its people. The scene where Mayor Baba shed his blood into the soil of America fulfilled a prophecy made by Baba that is rich with spiritual significance. From the cot on which he had been placed in the doctor's private study of the Prague hospital, Baba spelled out on his alphabet board to Ivy Deuce and Charmian, "You must understand that this accident was God's will, and it will result in benefit to the whole world." And later, as Baba recounted to Phyllis Frederick in New York, he spelled on his board, "America was after my blood for a long time." It's reported Baba said this with a beaming smile, as if everything had gone just as he wished. Jai Baba.
Thank you so much, Lynn. That's wonderful to get that backstory. Our special speaker tonight is Julia Margaret Burleson, the daughter of Dr. Ned Burleson, who was the doctor who treated Baba, Mara, Elizabeth just after the accident. She's going to share with us tonight stories of what it was like for her as a young girl of 10 who was there at the time of the accident, as well as a little bit about the town that was so blessed to be the ones to care for him and his close ones during that 12-day period. But before we turn to her, we want to share a short film compilation which will highlight some interviews with Dr. Burleson, as well as with Philip Luckendorf, who was the first of a generation of Baba lovers who came upon the scene of the accident and recognized its unique importance.
On May 24, 1952, Meher Baba and 4 of his women mandali endured a serious automobile accident in the center of the United States near Prague, Oklahoma. Baba, his beloved Mara, Mehru Irani, and Elizabeth Patterson were hospitalized for 12 days at the Prague clinic with severe injuries. Baba's sister Mani sustained only minor cuts and bruises. The patients were treated by the dedicated founder of the clinic, Dr. Ned Burleson, who later reported that Mara's condition was so precarious he feared she would not survive.
We were actually a bit late for the rendezvous, and Sarosh was getting terribly uneasy, and then suddenly he said, "Oh my God, what's that?" And I didn't take it in at the start, but on the bank we saw Baba lying and Mehra and Mani, and we jumped up. There were a crowd there already, and Baba was quite injured. We didn't know how badly then, and so was Mehra. And Elizabeth was in the car leaning over the what do you call the steering wheel. So I had a little pillow, and I put that at the back of Baba's head, and that got his blood on it. And that I presented to the center, because Baba had said that after it, his blood had to be shed on American soil.
The impact of the accident was very big because he was thrown out of the car. You know? And I was also thrown out of the car. We both. The ambulance came and one stretcher was quickly hurried to Baba to help Baba, to lift Baba in the stretcher. And when the stretcher came, Baba said no. He pointed towards me, he said help her first, you know. So Baba in great need, he was in great pain, need of help. Even then Baba thought of another and he told them to help me. And then, so that shows how much Baba's love is real, that you know, in such a time of crisis, even then he thinks of another, not himself. He's in great pain.
I was a physician who cared for Mary Baba when they had their accident. One of the ladies' most severe injury was a skull injury, which would look like a cracked egg that had been dropped about 3 feet from the floor. She got some swelling in the brain, but surprisingly recovered quickly. I think the fracture helped accommodate the swelling necessary.
When the specialist came and he showed the x-rays of Mara and Elizabeth to the specialist said, oh, both these women expired. Dr. Burleson said, no, they're still alive. And in other words, the impression I had was that he himself was sort of surprised that he had been able to save them, and didn't take full credit for it either. That was the kind of person that he was.
She was the one who required most of the time and attention to start with. When the ambulance brought the group in, of course, everybody wanted attention right quick. But as we always do, we pick out those that are most critical and attend to those things first. One of the party by the name of Money, we had put Mary Baba on only available space left, which was the OB table. Well, he had indicated by his talking on his fingers that he wasn't hurting, and had told me to go ahead and tend to what I was doing. Lonnie didn't want me to do that. She wanted me to take care of Baba first. Well, I ignored her.
He described how he was working on Mehera and working basically frantically to try to save her life. And meanwhile, other people started drifting into the room, and he started saying things to him, and he was trying to ignore them in order to concentrate on Mehera. But there was all this. He kept hearing all this Baba. You have to go look at Baba. This gentleman and Baba. And he said, I didn't know what they were talking about. But finally, it got so annoying and distracting that he stopped what he was doing, and he went to this adjacent room and looked in the door, and he said, and Baba was sitting there, and he said, as soon as I came in the doorway, Baba starts, and he kind of imitated Baba's face, and he says he starts beaming at me and like this, and you know, he says, so I figured he couldn't have been very badly hurt.
Make a long story short, everything turned out well, and everybody got well. And as soon as we got to the point where I thought they could stand the trip, they all made the trip to Myrtle Beach. The wounds all healed well and no complications. Of course, the high point to me, personally, was getting them all well and without any complications. That was, especially the one with the head injury, that was something. I didn't expect her to live. That's the worst fractured skull I've ever seen in my life.
For those of you who have not had a chance to see the film entitled The Greatest of My Sufferings, you can view it in full length on Vimeo. It's a beautiful production and well worth seeing it in its entirety. It was shown last year during the Sahavas, and it will give you much more information about the accident and Baba's words about it, as well as give you a feeling for the importance of this incredibly sacred site. So now I finally have the great honor to introduce you in person here to our very, very special guest, Julia Margaret Burleson, whose experiences of the Heartland Center and Prague surely predate all of us. She's the daughter of Dr. Burleson, who we just saw on the film, and she'll be sharing all of her experiences and recollections of that time, as well as all of her experiences of Baba, Mera, Elizabeth, Mani, and her own experience with Baba. So I'll just allow you to take it away, Julia. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm just so happy to be here. And I want to thank the Heartland Center and the Board of Directors for inviting me to come. I really enjoy doing these talks because for me, it brings back a lot of memories, and it helps me focus on what's important in life. 71 years ago, Baba planted a seed inside a little 10-year-old girl who saw the ambulance go by and ran out in the backyard and snuck over to the brick wall or the rock wall and watch the people get out of the ambulance that would be taken in the hospital. I had no idea what was happening, but I soon found out that India had just dropped into Prague, Oklahoma, which was quite a shock because all I knew about India was Rudyard Kipling and Rikki Tikki Tava and Kim on Buster Brown show. So I was fascinated, and I think Baba planted a seed that would take quite a few years to start to sprout, but it was there. Prague was, it still is, a very special little town. It was settled by people from Czechoslovakia in the early 1900s, and it was a special place. It was a wonderful place to grow up. My dad was a very big part of this community. But as you could see from the film, it was really kind of fun for me to see him. He was very calm, very quiet. He didn't get excited about a lot of things, but he would come home after Mayor Baba's accident and talk about Baba. So as a little girl, I just heard Baba. I didn't know what Baba meant. I just knew it was Baba. I thought that was his name. And one day, Monty came over and said to my mom, you need to get the little girls ready because Baba wants to meet them. He had asked my dad if he had any other children, and Daddy had said he had 2 little girls, as well as my 2 older brothers. And Baba said he wanted to meet us. So we had to take a bath, we had to put on a dress, we had to get all dressed up to go over and see Mayor Baba. And I remember walking into his room, and he looked over at us and he kind of motioned for us to come over. And I walked over. My sister was a little shy and she kind of hung back a little bit, but she came too. And when I got to his bedside, he started pointing to his alphabet board. And I have no idea what he said. I can't remember, but I was very fascinated that someone would talk by just pointing to letters. And that's how he communicated. But I have no idea what he said. And I just know that I was in his presence for a short time, and it was pretty exciting. My sister said later, she said, what do you remember about Mayor Baba? And I said, his eyes. He had the most penetrating eyes. And he was just lovely. Time passes, and we grow up in the little Methodist church in Prague, Oklahoma, not thinking about who Mayor Baba was until I was in high school, and Baba had sent us a book called God Speaks. He had signed it. It was on the library shelf, and I'd seen it my whole life, I would guess, from the time I was 10 years old. And I decided I would try to read it. And I was sitting right here, and I'm trying to read God Speaks. And I got through about 3 pages, and I just said, well, heck. If Baba's who he said he was, this would not be so hard to read and so hard to understand. And so I put the book back, and I never tried to read it again. So in 2002, I was invited to come back to Sahavas, and it was outside of Oklahoma City. And I wanted to know, who are these people? Who are the people that follow Mayor Baba? So I got there early, and the first person I met was Liam Mullen, who was a Baba lover, and he became a dear friend. And I met Leatrice Johnston, another Baba lover who had been with Baba her entire life. Her father had met Mayor Baba when he was a young man. And so her whole family had been followers of Mayor Baba. And we were having dinner that night, and it's really hard to explain how the feelings that were coming to me, I couldn't understand why I was, or my family was important to this whole story. I mean, I knew my dad took care of him, but I just couldn't quite recognize why other people were thinking it was so special that I was there. And I said something to Leatrice, and I said, you know, why would Baba pick Craig, Oklahoma, and my little, you know, my father's little hospital and my dad to be a part of this story? And she looked at me and she said, oh, Julia Margaret, Mayor Baba set your family up big time. And when she said that, it was like something cellular just penetrated my body. And I was just kind of stunned. I went to bed that night, and when I put my head down, Mayor Baba's face was right above me. And he was smiling. He was just, it was like someone giving me such an intense amount of love. And it was so strong that I was crying. I had tears running down my face, and I was grinning from ear to ear. And I kept thinking, you know, maybe this is just my imagination. So I would close my eyes and I would just kind of do this and open my eyes again, and his face is still there, and he's still looking at me and just smiling. And it seemed that this went on for the longest time. I told Leatrice about it the next morning, and she said, oh, my dear, you have had quite a spiritual shock, and you probably need to rest sometime today. But I wanted to help, and so I talked to the lady who was organizing the Sahavas, and I said, what can I do? And she said, well, you can take Isfandiar, healthcare worker, or his companion, to the store to buy food in Guthrie. So I am taking this sweet woman from Iran named Shireen in my car to Guthrie, Oklahoma. And while we're driving, she is reaching over, and she's kind of, and then she does this. And then a little bit later, she touches me again. I finally said, Shireen, you're freaking me out. What are you doing? And she said, you have to understand that all my life I have prayed to dear Baba that someday he would let me meet one of the children of the doctor who took care of him after the accident. And now you are taking me to the store. And I was still like, why? I mean, why is this, why would I be special, you know, in her eyes? But we had a lovely time. We get back to the center, and she says, now you must meet Isfandiar. So she takes me into his room. Esfandiar was probably 89 or 90 at the time. And he was sitting in a chair, and she told him, he didn't speak any English, she told him who I was. And he smiled at me, and he looked up, and he reached for my face, and he just started touching me. And just both hands came up, and he just started holding my face. And then he started touching my hair, and then my face. He just kept doing this. And, you know, I hadn't been a real touchy-feely person, but I started doing the same thing back to him. And it just seemed to be this love fest between the two of us. And when I had walked into the room, there were two men who were kneeling on the other side of the room. And in my mind, they kind of disappeared because all of my attention was on Esfandiar. And he motioned for me to sit down at the foot of his bed. And then he reached over and he took my arm and he just started walking up my arm with his hands, squeezing very hard. And it was like he was putting some kind of heat into my body. And then he stopped and he motioned for me to stand up again. And he started touching my face, my hair, and everything else. And we were just, you know, you lose track of time. You just think, this is just the greatest thing. And when he called Shireen into the room, he spoke to her and she said, Esfandiar told me to tell you to love Baba and to love Baba here, not here. And she repeated that 3 times. And then it was time for me to leave, and I walked out, and there was a big screened-in porch. And I looked out, and the wind was blowing, and the grasses were moving like waves in the water. And I was just sort of melted down. And then someone touched my shoulder, and it was Farshid, who had been in the room, and Farshid had been his interpreter for many years. And he touched me and he said, do you know what happened? I said, I have no idea what happened. And he said, I've been with Esfandiar many years and this is really rare. I said, and by now I'm just, you know, I'm in tears. And I said, what happened? He said, Esfandiar recognized you. What? He said, Esfandiar recognized you. And then he turned around and walked away. So I had another big jolt of Baba's energy, and it was overwhelming, to be honest with you. And I went to tell Leatrice what had happened. And then she said, oh, my dear, you must go and lie down in my cabin and you must go to sleep. And so that's what I did. And the rest of the Sahavas was just lovely. I got to meet a lot of people, but it certainly changed my life. I went back to New Mexico and I was by myself, because my husband was working in Texas at that time. And I hadn't participated in the duty. And I felt like I probably should have, but I didn't know what to name my stick. And so I thought, well, I'll just build a fire out in our fire pit and I'll have my own duty. But then I remembered that it was fire season and I couldn't build a fire. So, and there'd been a book that I wanted to buy called the book I called it the Book of Money's Dreams. I don't think that's the right title, but anyway. And I saw the postman come by and leave a package by my mailbox. And I walked across our lawn and I got there. And for some reason, I knew that it was going to be the book, Money's Book of Dreams. And Philip and Susan Lickendorf had sent that to me. And so later on, I was able to go out to Los Angeles and meet Val Kachuri, who was Mayor Baba's, I guess, last living mandali, and some other really lovely people. But after that, I came back and I had started a painting. And I looked at the painting and I looked up in the corner and it was a little busy, so I just got a great big brush and mixed some glaze, some color, and I just glazed over it. And then I laid the brush down and left the room for a little bit. And then I came back, and when I looked at the painting, up in that corner where I put the glaze was Mayor Baba's face. And I was just, okay, I'm getting all of these messages, and surely I'm supposed to be his. And I had a little card on my easel and Baba's picture on it, and I looked at it and I said, you know, Baba, I am really lonely for your people. I really would love to see some of your lovers. About 30 minutes later, the phone rang, and it was Philip Lickendorf. And he said, hey, Julia Margaret, I'm in Taos, New Mexico for a few weeks. Is there any way you could come see me? And I said, yes. And so, yeah, that's the way Baba works. So anyway, I went to Taos and I came back home, and then the next morning I got a call from Beatrice Johnson, and she said, John and I are going to be in Santa Fe on Tuesday. Would you like to come? And I said, yes. And I picked up Philip. He went with me. And we went to Santa Fe to the La Posada Hotel to meet them. And while we were sitting there, Philip jumps up and says, Freeney and Shireen, what are you doing here? So I had Mayor Baba's sister-in-law, his niece, Philip, who had been with him so many times, Beatrice, who had grown up with him, and all these people just surrounded me in a beautiful room and told me Baba stories for about 2 hours. So my little prayer to Baba, you know, I would really love to see some of your people. I miss them. He answered it. So beautifully. So fast forward, this house where I grew up was purchased by the new Heartland Center board. And I came back to renovate the house. And so I was working here by myself, and it was not in good shape. I had repaired the ceiling in the dining room, and I moved into the living room, and I was working over here by the front window, and was tired. Lynn Will had brought a picture of Baba over and put it on the mantle. And I was on the ladder, and I just turned over and I saw that picture, and I said, you know what, Baba, I could use some help here. And 30 minutes later, the back doorbell rang, and a woman was there, and she said, I heard you could use some help here. And she said, I can't help you, but I know someone who can, and he'll be here first thing in the morning. So it just seemed like at every turn, Baba Baba was listening, and he knew what I needed at that particular moment. So when my husband Daryl and I decided to sell the house we had in the Angel Fire Village and move out into the country, we went up to Ocotay Mesa, and we'd had the house on the market for quite a while, and nobody was coming to see it. And so I was on my knees picking up wild iris pods, and I thought, okay, it's time to talk to Baba. And so I said, I will go wherever you want me to go, and I will do whatever you need for me to do. But I just need a sign. I just need some direction here. I'm kind of lost. And that's all I said. And we went back into Angel Fire, and I noticed immediately that there was a realtor's card on the kitchen counter. I said, my goodness, they showed the house this afternoon. 30 minutes later, the realtor called and said, I have a contract on your house. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, you think about the embodiment of the divine as something apart from yourself. As a child, you grow up thinking God's in heaven, and as a child, and really even later as an adult, my image of God was the old man with the long white hair and the long white flowing robes, hovering over humanity with a giant fly swatter. And it was not an easy image to love, to be honest with you. And Jesus said that God is love. But that's not what I felt. But finally, after coming to Meher Baba, I knew that God was love, because love was all that mattered. And I've had quite a few experiences. I've told a lot of people the things that have happened. And what I take away from it is that, Baba is always with us. He's listening, and he's always here to not give you what you want, but give you what you need. And in 2019, my husband had developed emphysema, and we lived in the mountains in Mexico. And I knew we had to leave. He was not doing well, and I never thought I would leave. I loved living there. And we decided to take a trip to Mexico, and it turned out we decided to move to Mexico. And I didn't know how that was going to happen. But I had gone down, I rented a house, and I came back. And one of my little goats, I thought was starting to kid, but she wasn't. And I called the vet, and the vet came over, and she took care of her. As she was putting away her things in her truck, she looked at me and she said, this is the most beautiful house in the entire Moreno Valley. Your landscaping, everything is just beautiful, and I love it. And Daryl walked up about that time, and he said, well, Rachel, you should buy it. And she said, oh, you would never sell this. And I said, we have to. And she said, let me think about it. Anyway, she left, and a few days later she called and said, I'm going to buy it. And you don't have to clean out a thing. All you have to do is pack what you need in Mexico and go to Mexico. And I had 2 weeks to do that after we closed. So it was like Baba just kicked the doors open. I mean, it was just like, this was where you were supposed to go. This is where you're supposed to be, and I'm going to make sure it happens. And so it's been a wonderful life in Mexico. I love it. But when I come back to this house in Prague, Oklahoma, there's just a beautiful sense of Baba in every room in the house. And it feeds my soul again. I get hungry. And the thing about Mayor Baba's message and his teachings, they're not baby food like we get in some other religious institutions. You know, come and sing a few songs and say some prayers and do some rituals, and then, you know, then go have fun the rest of the week. You know, you don't have to follow anything. But Mayor Baba's teaching is real food. It's real spiritual food. It feeds your soul. And you don't feel a separation. There's no duality in his message, because he says, you and I are one. The whole world is one with its creator. And the force of the creator is divine love. One of his sayings that I especially love, he says, age after age, when the cup of righteousness runs low, the avatar, the divine one, must come again and again to give humanity a fresh dispensation of divine love. And so that's what he did. He came to give us all a fresh dispensation of divine love. And I think all you have to do is open your heart and it will be filled. We must not live in fear. We must not feel like we're separated by anything. We need to feel like we're one, not just with our neighbors, but with the entire world. I used to sit in church and I would kind of listen to the minister, but I would look out the window mostly and I would think, you know, the divine is out there in the trees, in the mountains, in the grass, in the water, as well as in here. But we're not fed that real spiritual food. We just keep getting baby food. And I got to the point that it was difficult for me to listen to that message. And I think Baba sent me, he sent me a message that I needed to learn more. So I went to the One Spirit Interfaith Seminary in New York City and to study all the religions of the world. And I was ordained there, and I really never wanted a church. I just wanted to see how all of the religions of the world come together with basically the same message, and they weave a beautiful cloth. But it seems that the different religions want to take that cloth and pick it apart and say, my piece of the cloth is much prettier than your piece of the cloth. And it's just, it's not where we need to be. We need to be a whole cloth. We need to have that beautiful weaving as a map to how we should live with one another. So I think if you can have an opportunity to come here and experience what Mayor Baba has given us, he's given it to us all, not just a few, but just like he said, to all humanity. And I think Prague is going to become more and more of a gathering place and a special place, not just for Mayor Baba's lovers, but for anyone who happens to come in contact with us. You can come here and read, you can look at videos, you can just enjoy music, whatever you want to do. But it's a beautiful place, and I'm just so proud that it's the little house that I grew up in. You know, I'm not sure how much more I should tell you, but one story was I had this dream, and it was a very powerful dream. And I was on a bus, and the bus stopped at an overlook at the Grand Canyon. And I got off the bus, and I'm, just being me, and I'm running around looking at all the beautiful sights and not paying attention. And everybody else gets on the bus, and it's pulling away. And so I'm running, I've got to catch that bus. And I jump up and I grab a hold of the window, and I'm trying to hold on. And I said, I can't hold on much longer. And then immediately in my dream, I'm in the bus, but I'm facing backwards, and I'm holding on to those little metal things on the tops of the school bus seat. I'm holding on to that, but there's nothing underneath me. And I look up, and there's a man sitting there, and he's from India. And I said, "Tell Baba to stop the bus. I can't hold on much longer." And I said it again, "Tell Baba to stop the bus. Tell Baba it's Margaret, he knows me." And when I said that, he kind of touched the guy in front, and then the bus stopped. And I knew everybody on that bus thought Jesus was driving the bus. But when he turned around, this light shot out, and it was like the color of the inside of a beautiful seashell. It was that pink, peachy color. It was just shoo. And everybody went, "Ah, it is Mayor Baba." And he looked at me, and he pointed at me, and he said, "Pull yourself up by yourself." Just like that. And I levitated and sat down next to the man from India, and the bus went down the road. So I wrote that dream down, and I sent it to Monty. She was still alive. And I got a message back. I got a note back from Monty, and she said, "Everybody here at the center in India loved your dream. And isn't it wonderful how Mayor Baba just brings his special ones back into his circle at just the right time? And surely he has a wonderful journey for you to take." And it has been quite a journey, to be honest with you. But that dream was so powerful, and I will never forget it. I did get to go to India. I did get to meet a lot of other people who had experiences with Mayor Baba, and one man said he was in the army, and they were training close by, and he didn't have any salt, and he needed some salt, and he went over to Mayor Baba's I don't know if you call it a compound or what, but anyway, he went up, and there were people that were standing outside, and he said, "I just need a little pinch of salt." And someone brought me some salt, and they said, "You know who lives here? This is Mayor Baba's home." Oh, and that was all that man needed. That was all the contact he needed with Mayor Baba. And he became one of Mayor Baba's most devoted followers. He had been studying, I'm remembering the story now, he had been studying, and he needed a tutor, and he'd gone to the tutor's house, and the tutor had a photograph of this man, and he didn't know who it was. And but he loved it. He wanted to go back again and again just because of that photograph. And he said, when I walk in the room, that photograph would be looking at me and smiling. And I just fell in love with this person. I didn't know who it was. And he said, one day I said, "Who is that?" And he said, that's Mayor Baba. He lives out, you know where he lives. You went there for a little pinch of salt. And he said, I went back and I told him I have to meet him. And he did. But Baba works in such interesting ways, and not everyone is going to have the same experiences that I've had or most of the Baba lovers have had, but I think through Baba's love and the way we love each other and the way we love the people who come into our path, opens your heart to Mayor Baba's love. So I don't know how much more. I mean, I have other stories to tell, but I'm not sure how much more time I have to tell them. Huh?
You have plenty of time.
I have plenty of time? Okay.
Can you tell about going to the center?
Oh, you know, when I was a little girl, we always would get little notes, and they would have a return address, and it would be Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And my mom would say, well, that's a note from Monty. Now, Monty had come over to the house when we were little girls, and she would play with us. And so in my mind, she was just the most beautiful, beautiful young woman I'd ever seen, and I just loved her. So her notes were so special. And the fact that they came from Myrtle Beach, that all stuck in my brain. So I went to Durham, North Carolina with my second husband, and he said, let's go down to Myrtle Beach. I have cousins down there. I was okay. So we drove to Myrtle Beach, and we're having lunch with his cousin Bob. And John said, you know, Bob, and he was being a little facetious, I'm sorry. And you've been able to develop almost every square inch of Myrtle Beach with a beach towel shop or a t-shirt shop or a miniature golf course. And his cousin said, isn't it great? He said, yeah. He said, we've had access to every part of the coast in this part of South Carolina, except there's one part we can't get our hands on. It's 495 acres of the most beautiful property in all of South Carolina. And some crazy woman named Elizabeth Patterson talked her dad into giving it to some Indian guru way back in the 40s. And I just sat there and I thought, oh my gosh, that's Mayor Baba's place. I didn't say a word. I waited till I got in the car, and I told John, and he said, we're on our way. So we drove straight out there. And there's just a little sign. There's no big praying hands. There's no ostentatious, thing. It's just trees and a little sign that says Meher. And so we drove in. There's a little cottage on the left. It says, please stop here before you go any farther. So we did, and I jumped out, and I went in, and there was a little meeting going on, and then there was a lady in here behind a desk, and I'm looking around, and she comes out and says, can I help you? And I said, well, I don't know. I said, I'm just here because I met Mayor Baba when I was 10 years old. You did what? And I said, yeah, my dad was the doctor who took care of him after the accident. Well, I could have been Elizabeth Taylor at that point. The excitement was beyond anything I'd ever expected. And she picks up the phone, and she's taking me over to Kitty Davies' house to see her, and then she later gives us a tour of the center. And as we're leaving, I looked at John and I said, this is the most Christ-like place I've ever been in my life. And he said, yeah, it is, isn't it? And so I think all of these places have been touched by Baba's love. That love stays there, and you feel it when you go there. So that was the one time I got to go to Myrtle Beach. I haven't been able to go back, but maybe someday I'll get to do that. And I'm trying to think of the trip to India. I'd always wanted to go to India, and George and Angela Chin had invited me to come to Manhattan and give a talk to their group. And I did that and came home, and I don't know, sometime later, in about 9:30 at night, I get a phone call from George Chin, and he said, I was in Manhattan tonight with some friends, and I got this really powerful message that I had to call you tonight and invite you to come to India with us. But I had to call you tonight. And I said, well, George, I'm glad you called me tonight because I'm leaving at 4 o'clock in the morning to drive to Texas. And you wouldn't have been able to reach me. So I said, let me talk to my husband, and I'll call you right back. And so I went over to Daryl and I said, George Chin just invited me to go to India with them. And I said, I don't really know what to do. And he just looked at me and he said, you've wanted to go to India all your life. What are you talking about? Just call him back and say you're going. And so anyway, I didn't have a passport. I didn't have a visa. And I had about 2 weeks to get this done. And so I drove to Fort Worth. I told my daughter, and she immediately called an expediter who said, "Oh, I can get your passport, no problem." And someone had said I had to get my visa through San Francisco, and I just didn't know how that was going to work. But I just figured this is my one chance to go to India, and it's going to work. So I waited and waited, and I finally said, I've got to go back home and get ready to go to India. My passport hadn't come yet. And I said, my daughter is Michael. I said, Michael, when he brings the passport, you just sign all the papers and you can mail it to New York, and I'll get it when I get up to the Chin's house in New York. And so I left. And I got about 60, 70 miles away, and my little funky old car started going, mm. And I thought, oh no, I will never make it to New Mexico. So I turned around and I went back and left my car at a mechanic's garage, and my daughter picked me up and took me back to her house. And I swear it wasn't 30 minutes after we got there, the expediter called and said, I have your passport. And he came over and I said, I'm really glad that I'm getting my passport because I was on my way to New Mexico and I was going to let my daughter sign it. He said, no, you have to be here and sign it in front of me. So somebody made my little car break down, made me turn around and go back to Fort Worth. And I said, I need a visa and I don't know how I'm going to get it. And he said, well, I can get that for you. And luckily I had sold a pretty large painting, so I had some cash. And I said, okay, and paid him for it. We bought a FedEx big envelope, and he said, I'll just put it in there and send it to New York City and you'll have it before you leave. It all worked out. I mean, it all worked out. And I got to go to India. So I'm thinking that I've had a really blessed life. And that little seed that Baba planted is still trying to flower as best it can. And it will, I think coming back to Prague, it's like I'm getting my spiritual food. I'm getting my nourishment that sometimes it kind of runs low in today's world when you get caught up in all of the things that can distract you from Baba's love. So it's a wonderful thing to come back. And I think
we have some questions.
Oh, sure, sure.
I would love to, well, I guess I could just ask them. Well, we have first of all, thank you so much. It's so beautiful to see the way in which, I mean, for me listening also, just the way in which Baba has kind of drawn you close and actually, giving you the royal treatment. So, and just the immense blessing. I mean, as you pointed out in the beginning, the immense blessing that your whole family received. And so one of the questions that popped into my head was, as you have gone on and sort of grown closer to Baba or understood more about Baba, because as a 10-year-old child, I imagine you had no clue, right? What was happening? This Baba was there. India dropped into your life. What does it mean, to you now that your experiences as a child, like as you sort of understand more of the immensity of Meher Baba, when you look back from this vantage point?
Well, I think growing up in a Christian family and having the safety of that little church and all the people that went there, it kind of kept me safe and helped prepare me for Baba's message. And when I look back, it's, when you get to be my age, geez, I'm 81, and you look back and you think, if you're 10, you think 81 is a long way off, but if you're 81, it's been a fast ride. And so anyway, I just think that every time, whether it was perceived as a mistake or whatever happens in your life, the divine has a plan for you, and you can see things either as a tragedy, or you can see things as a blessing. Sometimes it takes a pretty big slap on the face to get you to change your direction and go another way. But I think throughout, I was blessed to have beautiful children and a lovely family, and I have 3 great-grandchildren now. And so I don't know, I just had a wonderful life.
You did. And what, now, I mean, we've heard a lot about, what happened after, but maybe if you could share a story or two, what it was like for the 10-year-old and what your relationship with Mani was, for example, and in that time, and also because I know she came and visited you and she was very touched by the love that the town showed her.
She was.
And so, and just what your relationship was with her during that time and afterward.
Mani would come over here and she would play with us, and we had a little dog named Rusty. And she told me that they had a little dog, a little Cocker Spaniel too. And when she got back to India, she sent me a photograph of their dog sitting in like a high chair with a birthday hat on. And it was so playful and so cute and it just made me love her more, because she was sharing that with me. But she would come over to the house, and what I remember most was she was fascinated with Mother's washing machine. My mom had a Bindex washing machine, front loader, so you could look in there and you could see it going around and round, and the water coming in, and the clothes washing. And I remember that Mani would go down in the basement and watch the washing machine. And but my mom loved her. My mom was kind of introverted, and she loved Mani. She loved the people that came, but she was not so impressed with the people that rang the front doorbell in the years to come. And she would sit in that room in there, and if the front doorbell rang, she would say, it's probably some of those Baba people again. Somebody answered the door, and I'm not here. And so if Dad was home, he would always go answer the door, and he was very gracious, and he would invite everybody in and talk to them. But my mother was like hiding out in the sunroom, and she was, But I think as a little child growing up, oh, I forgot to tell you one great story. One day, we got this box about this big, and it was from, at that time it was still Bombay, India. And I was so excited. What could this be? So it was right over there on the floor. And so my mom let me open it, and it was a full leopard pelt. Oh, yeah. And I love Tarzan. And so in my mind, that was going to be the door over that I was just going to hang that in the doorway, take the door off to my bedroom and hang the leopard pelt in the doorway. And I said, can we do that, Mom? And she said, no. So she took it to Oklahoma City, and she had a little pillbox hat made, and she had a bell with an ascot and a buff and all this fancy stuff made out of it. And then I had little scraps left over. I don't think she ever wore the hat, and I never saw her wear the belt, and I don't think she ever had a use for this, what they call a muff, where you put your hands in like this, but I had those for years and years, and I think my daughter now has some of those. And I gave some of it to the Sufis in California as well. That was really a big deal. And we didn't know who had shot the leopard. And when I was in India, I was talking to Meru, who was in the accident. And I said, Meru, do you know who shot the leopard? And she said, yeah, my dad shot the leopard. She said, my dad was a great hunter. And my dad shot the leopard.
That's so wonderful. And then I guess one final question. I don't know how much more time we have, but it must, well, first of all, you did mention what it was like to be back here in this home for you. And I imagine just watching your face when you were seeing your dad's interviews, you know, just the emotion that came over your face. But what does it feel like, or it must be important to you that this house and the Morrison house next door is being transformed into a center for Meher Baba that is going to be open to all people. And so I just wondered if you had anything you might want to say about that, or if you have any thoughts or feelings about that.
Well, I think one, for the town of Prague, for these two homes to be so beautifully renovated, you know, it has to be inspiring to other people, just to see the good work that the Meher Baba community has done here. And for me, it's precious. I mean, who would ever think you could ever go home again, you know? And, so that was one of the things Baba let me do, let me come home again.
Yes.
And several times. And
you'll always be able to come home.
yes.
Yeah.
And so I think that's very special to me. And what was the other part of that question?
Well, just that, yeah, just how it felt to know that this house has been restored and that it's, you know, now becoming part of Baba's center here.
I think one of the reasons, you know, I can understand why this house would be important, but when I was on the board, I wanted people to understand why it might be important to have the Morrison's house too. Because Speedy Morrison was in that little corporation that was formed by my dad to build the hospital. And he was a banker, and there was another banker, Mr. Hartman, who lived just a catty cornered across from the hospital. And I'm sure there were other people I didn't know, I was just a kid. But I know that after my dad passed away, there were times when the city of Prague felt like they had to close the hospital. And Speedy Morrison kept that hospital open. He said, no, you will not close it. We're going to find a way to keep it going. So I think I think it's important that people know that, and that he was an important part of getting the funds together to build the hospital. And he felt very strongly about keeping it open. And they were, you know, like family to us too.
Yeah. Well, clearly Baba wanted that.
I think
look
so.
At how beautiful the Morrison house is now.
I think he wants the hospital too, and I think so.
Little by little.
But that's another story for another time.
So, yeah, one more question. How did the rest of your family feel about Baba at the time and over the years, just particularly over the years as time went on?
You know, my brother told me probably 15 years ago, he said, you know, Meher Baba has become my spiritual teacher. Oh, wow. And Mike's always been very, I don't want to use the word religious. I just want to say that he's always been on a spiritual quest. And after he had been here, he said, you know, Meher Baba is my spiritual teacher. And my sister went to the Sahavas in Guthrie in 2002. She came the last night, and she was kind of like, I'm only 8 years old and I don't really remember anything. And she also spoke at the church with me when everyone came over here a few days later. But a friend of hers saw her after she had been to the last night of those Sahavas, and she walked in Beth's house and she looked at her and she said, "Beth, you've been changed." She could just see it in her face. And another story about that time was that my husband Daryl came, and they had the orgy that night, and so they passed out, the cheat sheets, because those of us who don't get to do that very often, we don't know all the words to all the songs, the prayers, and all that, so we have to read it. Anyway, Daryl is standing in front of me, and after it's over, a friend comes over, and she says to him, "You didn't need to do that." And I heard him say, "Oh, but I wanted to." And I said, "Was he reading and saying the prayers and everything?" She said, "Yeah, he was." So the very next day, we're getting ready to leave Oklahoma City, and I get a phone call from the man who's staying in our home in New Mexico. And he said, "Margaret, I need to talk to you. I have two things I need to tell you. And I could tell you the first one, but I cannot tell you the second one." Well, that's not good. And I said, "What's the first thing?" He said, "Well, Daryl's mom had a massive heart attack last night, and she died 5 times on the way to the hospital, but she seems to be doing a lot better today." And he said, "I can't tell you the other part." And I handed the phone to Daryl, and he told Daryl that our son Will had been riding his motorcycle in Los Angeles. He was on a toll road, and he switched lanes, and when he did, the car in front had slammed on the brakes, and he hit the back of the car, and he and his motorcycle flew over the top of the car, landed on the pavement, and there was a ER doctor in the car behind him with 2 nurses. And he turned to the 2 nurses and he said, "Just call an ambulance. There's no way that kid survived that wreck." And the only thing that happened to Will is that he messed up his little finger.
Wow.
And if that doesn't put chills down your back, nothing will. So, yes, I felt like Baba was not only watching over me, but my family as well. Yeah.
He says that, he does.
Yes.
He kept his promise.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much. This has been so wonderful, just to be so moved to hear how Baba has kind of come, he's never forgotten that 10-year-old, and how he has, just come into your life little by little and just sort of absorbed you. And it's just such an honor to have you here with us tonight.
Thank you. I love being invited, and I love being with all of you, and it's been great for me.
Well, come back anytime.
This
is always your home.
Thank you.
Enough to have Julia Margaret here with us yesterday as well, when we had a tea that we invited all of the hospital staff over to take a tour of the 2 homes, and Julia gave a talk to the community, and it was actually quite wonderful for her to reconnect with some old friends and for them to hear stories of the great impact that her father has had on this community. I mean, in terms of even building a high school and the community pool here, he was involved in all of that. So it was just a wonderful way for the community to come in and see the 2 homes and to meet Julia. And so we were very fortunate to have her here for that. So now, coming up next, we're going to We're, as promised, we're going to be revealing some pretty exciting and important news about upcoming events that are happening here in Prague. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Daniel Stone for that.
Jai Baba, everybody. It's a joy to be with you all, with all of his lovers all around the world participating in today's Sahavas. So Jai Baba, and I'm especially happy to be able to be with you and to share some really important breaking news about what's happening here in Prague relative to Jai Baba's sacred. I'm going to show you a couple of scenes here. But as you know, as we said earlier, that there are two major sites here associated with Mayor Baba's accident. The first, of course, is the accident site itself out on Route 62. And the second is the clinic that Julia's father started, the Burleson Clinic. And these are photographs on the upper left of what the clinic looked like back then in 1952. And below it sort of kind of shows you what the clinic looks like a little bit today. So the Avatar Mayor Baba Heartland Center here in Prague has anticipated for many years that one day these sites could in fact become available for acquisition. And if so, it was an opportunity to establish memorials there for humanity, for posterity. So as of today, the hospital building itself is really quite aged, but there is a room in there that Mayor Baba spent 12 days in, which is really longer than he spent almost anywhere in the United States, other than Myrtle Beach and Yukon Dunes and maybe one or two other places. But it's where he came and he did his universal work relative to it seems like he said work that would benefit the whole world. So he did that in that hospital room there. And as of today, the hospital makes it possible for Baba lovers to come here and actually go into Baba's room and experience Baba's presence there and Baba's love there. So but the hospital, as I said, has been getting old. And as it's been aging, the hospital's been wanting to move. But what's been holding them back in that process is they rely on the government to be able to provide reimbursement for services that are provided there, especially Medicare and Medicaid services. So they've not been able to move until the government gives them permission to move to a different site and allows them to receive reimbursements of that new site. Well, we were told very recently that by the hospital that they've actually very recently been granted permission, very, very likely been granted permission by the government to actually be able to make that move and make that make that happen. And so what that means is the acquisition of the hospital is probably no longer a question of when it's going to happen, or not a question of if it's going to happen. It's really a question of when it's going to happen. Now, what's interesting about this is about a year and a half ago, a number of us, including, were invited by the Avatar Mayor Baba Heartland Center Board of Directors to join them in coming up with a vision for what should happen here in Prague. And out of that, we gave birth to something that we now call the Heartland Memorial Initiative. And we invited a number of people, Baba lovers from around the country, to join us here in Prague in October to share that vision and to talk about how we were going to actually organize ourselves to achieve it. We didn't have any idea then that the hospital was going to be available to move. Some of us thought it wouldn't happen for at least 10 years or even longer than that. But nevertheless, we operated with the faith and the conviction that by Baba's grace, it might in fact happen sooner than that, and we should really be prepared for that eventuality. So we created this Heartland Memorial Initiative at that time, and we began organizing ourselves and laying the groundwork. And just as we seem to have the groundwork pretty much laid, that's when we found out from the hospital that in fact they'd been granted the permission they needed and would actually very, very likely be moving. So it seemed like it was just Baba's impeccable timing to make all of that happen at that time. So in the coming months, we're going to be sharing with you through our website and other ways information about how this effort to acquire the hospital site and memorialize the hospital site is going to proceed. But we see this initiative as not just being the opportunity or the responsibility of just a small group of people here that have organized so far, but we really do see it as the responsibility and the opportunity for the entire Baba family, and not just in this country, but around the world. Because we see in this, that Baba said, that this is an opportunity for us to work for Baba, and Baba said, my work is your opportunity. So we're incredibly excited about this, because we believe that that based on Baba's own statements about the significance of this accident for the whole world, this site is one of the most sacred sites associated with Meher Baba, not only in the Western world, but in the whole world. And that this hospital and this area here in Prague is destined to one day become a place of world pilgrimage. Now, we're also interested in not just the hospital, but we are also interested in acquiring the land adjacent to the accident site itself. As we've said earlier, the accident site actually took place on public property. So we're not interested and we're not able to acquire the site of the accident, but there is land immediately adjacent to the accident site that we believe will someday be an ideal spot to acquire for establishing a retreat center or a memorial or both. But we believe that that's not actually the current priority, because the hospital, for one thing, that land next to the accident site isn't available. But more importantly is that if the hospital gets sold, we are going to have one opportunity, probably only, to be able to acquire it. And so it's really urgent that we be prepared that when if and when the hospital becomes available, which we believe could be very soon, that we actually be prepared to move forward with that acquisition and begin the memorialization. Now, in the Heartland Memorial Initiative, we're very early still in the design process. And at tomorrow's program, we are going to share with you some of our early design ideas for what this memorial could actually look like. So we really do urge you to be here tomorrow night so you can see what that is and start thinking for yourself and helping us in the imagining process of what it is that can be created for Meher Baba in this sacred site here in Prague, Oklahoma. Jai Baba.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That was really exciting. And I just want to dovetail on what he just said. Say that it's been a truly amazing and wonderful experience to be working with a group of dedicated Baba lovers coming together to work in the spirit of collaboration on this important and very, very timely project. And I personally feel very grateful and honored to be part of the unfolding of it during this time, because it does have the feeling, as Daniel mentioned, of that somehow we all came together thinking this was going to be something that was going to happen over a long period of time. But as Baba wishes, when it's time for something to happen, it just starts to move along. So it's a very exciting time to be part of it. And we're just getting started. So there promises to be many more opportunities to get involved going forward. So please be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and visit our website, the ambheartlandcenter.org, to sign up for our newsletter so you can keep abreast of what is coming up and what will be happening in ways that you can participate and get involved. And as Daniel mentioned, tomorrow evening, we will definitely be giving more information and giving more of a glimpse of what it might begin to look like. So please be there. Now, we would like to have a moment of, just taking it all in and breathing it all in with some beautiful music by our musical guests, Julie and Rusty, to close out the evening. And Julie and Rusty Rest have been together for over 30 years in love, in marriage, and in music. Rusty is the one who introduced Julie to Meher Baba in 1989, and their love for each other and for Baba shines through every time they perform. Julia has recorded 6 albums, many of which are my favorites, and Rusty is currently finishing recording his first solo EP entitled Quarantined. So it is a great honor to have Julie and Rusty in person with us here in the Burleson house.
We're really happy to be here, aren't we, Rusty?
I am. Hang on a second, something's not happening. I'm sorry.
Something's not happening. This is my first time here at the Heartland Center, and I want to share that it is absolutely everything that they say it is. I was very, very, very surprised at the profound amount of love that I felt in this house when I entered it. I recommend everybody come here at least once.
It's happening.
When I first saw your eyes, I knew there's no other us about the story about the picture. What was the looking at the picture of Baba? When Rusty introduced me to Baba, he was showing me around his house, and I saw a little picture of Baba in his mirror. And I know that guy. Yeah. Who is that? Famous actor? What? It didn't even occur to me. Rusty said, "Why would I have a picture of a famous actor on my mirror?" Oh, I know him. As soon as I saw him, just couldn't quite place it. I said, "Oh, that's Mayor Baba." I said, "I don't even know what you just said." I knew as soon as I heard his name, I would remember, but it took a little bit longer. I love my alone time. I share with you, and every day I need this time with you. In our silence, there are no secrets. You can reach my heart, and I feel your this love starts from your heart and flows my way. I know you will not move a breath away. In our silence, there are no secrets. You can reach my heart, and I feel your love. Back in the world, everything's a dream. Only you are clear and real to me. 'Cause in our silence, there are no secrets. You can reach my heart, and I feel your love. I love my alone time. I share with you. Roshan Karawala came and stayed with Rusty and I for a couple of times. And she had this beautiful little picture of Baba that she traveled with. And I was playing piano one night, and she said, "You must have a picture. You must look at Baba when you play." And she took her little picture and put it on my piano. And I said, "You're right." And she let me keep that picture. And this was the picture that inspired this song. I will never be mad. I will never be mad. When I look into your eyes. Oh, your eyes, deep love resides. Oh, your eyes, I love your eyes. I don't think about fate. I don't think about states of mind. I don't think about hate. When I look into your eyes. Oh, your eyes, deep love resides. Oh, your eyes, I love your eyes. Oh, your eyes, deep love resides. Oh, your eyes, I love your eyes. I feel love when I look into your I think we're all in agreement there, right? Papa's got some beautiful eyes. I'm so grateful we've got the moving pictures. He's like looking around, smiling at this one and smiling at that one. In this moment, I am feeling happy that I get to be with you right now, right now, right now, right now. It's as if this is my birthday and I blew the candles out. My wish came true right now, right now, right now. And I hope you don't mind if I sing. Telling you this way's kind of my thing. Smiling becoming a permanent thing. Right now with you, a dream come true. Could this be my own creation, coming from my imagination? Being with you right now, right now, right now. Truly there is no hesitation. Being in joy is my intention. Feeling it too right now, right now, right now. And I hope you don't mind if I say, telling you this one is kind of my thing. Smiling becoming a permanent thing. Right now with you, a dream come true. Finding a feeling I believe in. This is a secret worth revealing. Living in love right now, right now, right now. Giving it no resistance ever makes this moment even better. Being with you right now, right now, right now. And I hope you don't mind if I sing. Telling you this feels kind of my thing. Smiling becoming your permanently. Right now with you. Somehow I knew this dream would come true. In this moment I am happy. Thank you, and it is really a happy moment because it's been probably about, I don't know, since before Mariah was here. Somebody was here before Mariah who was here taking care of the house. Do you know? Do they know? Who was it? I think so. I think it was like right around that time. I was like, oh, I really want to go there. Really want to go there someday. So here we are.
Right now.
Right now.
She always did say
Right
that.
now. Right now. This is great. We were hoping Mariah would be here because Mariah begged me to come while she was here. Hi, Mariah, if you're there. We're going to do one more song and then we'll be here for RT in the morning and then we'll be back tomorrow night. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd be the same, just your average Joe. The one to blame, that's the way it goes. I didn't know what was possible. How could I know if I never met you? I never met you. Lisa.
I'm coming there. Coming to honey. Well, thank you guys so much. That was fabulous, and I look forward to tomorrow. I just wanted to thank you all for joining and hope you enjoyed the program. And as a reminder, tomorrow the japa starts at 5 a.m. So please sign up if you would like to still participate, but participate regardless. 11 a.m. Eastern Time will be the Arti, which will begin, and there'll be the recitation of Baba's prayers, 2 Arti sung, and then we'll have singing that will coincide, the end of that will coincide with the time of Baba's accident, 11:45 Eastern Time. There'll be a period of silence. Then the program will reconvene tomorrow evening at 7:30, and we have another really special program, so please don't miss it. It's a panel presentation about the significance of Baba's sacred sites, and we'll be having Daniel Stone and Philip Luckendorf as participants in that. And we'll be also having an early sharing of some of the images of the possible memorialization directions that we're going. And then, of course, we'll end with more music from Julie and Rusty. So we'll see you all tomorrow, and feel free to stay on the Zoom a little bit and chat with each other if you'd like. But until then, sleep well. Jai Meher Baba. Jai Baba.
Yeah, Lisa.